welcome to my desk. Today I'm not going to be drawing, but I am going to be putting together some of my older videos to make an hour-long format. I hope you enjoy it. I love Avatar. A lot of people do. It's a really classic, great series. Maybe one of the more or the most beloved animated series of all time. And I just thought it'd be cool to draw some of the main characters for you today. And I decided to draw one bender from each of the 4 nations. Air, fire, water, and earth. Not in that order. But I'm going to start with air, and I'm going to draw Aang, who is the last airbender. And honestly, I just love this show. It's a classic. It's got great world building. I love the bending. I always thought it was really cool as a kid. Just like really wanted to be a bender. I think probably wanted to be a water bender the most. But air is cool too, because you can kind of fly. And Aang is just a 12-year-old boy who is, the next Avatar. Who is like a figure similar to the Dalai Lama that appears once every generation and is the only person that can control all 4 of the elements and bend them to their will. And one appears every generation and alternating nations. So this generation it had to be an airbender. And Aang is discovered, and he's in training when the Fire Nation attacks and commits a genocide of the Air Nation in order to wipe out this generation's Avatar. And this is part of a plot to take over the known world and become kind of an empire. Fascist empire. So, as you can probably tell, this series has a very relevant subject matter. And for a kid show, it honestly tackles some issues that you don't really often see in series or, programming for children. Okay, so that's Aang. And I'm going to draw now Katara. Katara is from the Water Nation, and she's a water bender. And there are 2 water nations, or 2 water tribes, the north and the south, at either pole of the world that this series takes place. And honestly, I can't remember which one she's part of. I think she might be in the south, but I'm just guessing now because it's been a minute since I've watched the series. And her story arc, she starts off not really being very good at bending because after 100 years of the Avatar being missing, the Fire Nation has really taken over. And they kept her and, everyone else from bending as a way to maintain control of the world. So it's forbidden for her to bend, but she's learning anyways. And then as the story progresses, she becomes a very, very talented and skilled bender. And she even learns to bend people's blood, which is a pretty controversial thing if you think about it. And she does struggle with it morally and decides that she doesn't want to do it, but that's just goes to show you that she has incredible power, and she learns to control it and when to use it and when not to use it. She has a lot of a strong moral compass, because again, this series talks a lot about, you know, good and bad, but a lot of times it's a gray area, you know. And I do think that it handles that show, or that theme, in a very mature, but also accessible way. And obviously it's a very, well, not obviously for some, but I guess it's very relevant to today in these times. And I think if you have children, it'd be a good idea to let them watch this series, because it's just honestly very entertaining, but also important, I think. But yeah, Katara and her brother find Aang frozen, and they free him from a block of ice, and they begin a journey to stop the Fire Nation. And I just think that they just do a great job. I don't know what I'm saying. But okay, so that's Katara. And now I want to draw a Fire Nation bender. I'm going to draw Uncle Iroh. And Uncle Iroh is the brother of the leader of the Fire Nation, who's kind of this like fascist leader who's trying to create, you know, an all-encompassing power. And he's taken the prince, Zuko, under his wing as they search for the Avatar in order to kill and maintain power. But the thing I like about Uncle Iroh is that he's actually a good character. He's not evil. And I think that's also like really cool that they were able to show that even on the enemy side, there are likable people, likable characters, people that see reason and are not evil. It makes the show that much more complex and, you know, closer to real life and how things are. And he is, you know, dutifully following orders, but he also encourages his nephew to think outside of the indoctrination that the Fire Nation has created. And he's very wise and often, you know, telling lessons, moral lessons, and like fables and, you know, metaphors. So I just wanted to draw him. Also, he can do some really cool stuff. In, you know, with bending and stuff. I saw him breathing fire and that kind of thing, and it's really, really impressive. So the show itself was inspired heavily by, you know, Chinese and other East Asian cultures, but mainly Chinese culture. And martial arts is like a heavily used inspiration for the like actual choreography and like seems really well researched and really well, like it has a respect for those cultures. I think you might have to, I'm not an expert, but it seems very respectful and well researched. Okay, so that was Iroh. And now I'm going to draw an earthbender. And I'm going to draw Toph. And Toph is the earthbender. So during the show Avatar, Aang is like traveling the world in order to learn the four elements because he never finished his training. So they go to the Earth Nation to meet or to find someone to teach him earthbending, and Toph ends up becoming his mentor and tutor for earthbending. And honestly, as a kid, earthbending seemed the least interesting to me, but as an adult, when I rewatched the show, I found it the most cool and impressive type of bending, and especially the way that Toph bends. And the cool thing about Toph is, well, she's blind, and so she uses her senses and her, connection to the earth to feel her opponent or, whoever around her, feel her surroundings, and is able to navigate the world without really seeing anything just because of her earth bending abilities. And again, the show did a really good job of, representing different identities as well in that sense, because, Toph is blind, but there's also another character who's a paraplegic, and, they're not represented in any way that seems like they're less than or weaker or anything. And I think that is a good representation, for maybe some kids watching that are similar, they're blind, or, well, they're not watching if they're blind, but, interacting with the material in a way. I think that's cool. And Toph has this kind of attitude, she's headstrong, and she doesn't really want to teach anyone at first. She's using her powers to, win battles and arenas and stuff, and make money. Another creepy element of the series, now that I'm thinking about it, is the city that they find Toph, which is, I think it's Ba Sing Se, which I think I read is loosely based on Beijing, the Great Wall. But the entire city is sort of brainwashed and has this pleasant attitude, and I feel like that is also a cool, interesting, if not very creepy representation of indoctrination and, basically cult. So it's a pretty heavy show. Okay, so that was Toph, and that's the last character that I'm going to draw today. So I hope you like. Okay, so I'm going to draw some of the main characters of Adventure Time, and I'm going to start with Finn. Finn is the human. Finn is the human. Sorry, I always confuse Finn and Jake. But starting with Finn, I do find him kind of like maybe the most deceptively difficult to draw. I don't know, maybe it's just this screenshot, but I was struggling with this drawing when I was practicing, and I'm just not sure it's gonna turn out that great in this turn. But so Jake is a human. I mean, he's the only human in this post-apocalyptic world of, I think it's called Ooh. I can't remember now. But he has a brother named Jake who's a dog, and they work together as a team to fight monsters and protect princesses from danger in this kind of fairy tale like world. And it's interesting because as the show goes on, you start to learn more about the lore, which can be like pretty dark. But okay, so that's Finn. And now I want to draw Jake. Jake is the brother of Finn, and he's a dog that can shapeshift. So he can get like big and small and everything. But also like change the shape of his hands and stuff to make like weapons. Or sometimes he will like make his hand into a key or something, you know, to like enter a locked room or something. I don't know. He's very creative with his shape-shifting. And he's voiced by the same guy that does Bender in Futurama. So I always think of Bender when I watch this show as well. And the style of this show is also very like of its time. I think a lot of people refer to it as like the CalArts style. And I'm not against it. Like, I don't think it's bad or anything, but I do think that a lot of people maybe criticized it for just becoming like oversaturated, you know, in the cartoon world. But Jake is probably my favorite character. I think he's really funny, and he has a heart of gold. There are some really nice moments with Jake. Okay. So now I want to draw Lumpy Space Princess. And I figured she'd be pretty easy to draw, so let's see how easy it is actually. But she's kind of like a valley girl kind of vibes. Like she talks like she's from California, and she has like very high standards. It's kind of complaining all the time, and just really boy crazy. She really wants a boyfriend. So I feel like she's kind of like this teenage girl archetype. And I do think it's funny because she talks like Mean Girl, but she looks like a monster. So I don't know, I thought that this cute little dichotomy or whatever it's called. And she is also one of the funnier characters for me. Like, she says some really funny one-liners. And she's just always doing like funny, selfish things that get the kids in trouble, the main characters. And in this picture, she's holding this knife. Yeah, I just wanted to like find things like images of these characters that were not like the character design picture, you know. I didn't want to draw those, so I just went on YouTube and I took screenshots screenshots from actual episodes. And I don't really remember why she was holding that knife. But okay, so now I'm gonna draw Marceline. Marceline is a vampire. I think she's like thousands of years old. And in this picture, she's freaking out about something. I'm not really sure what. But as I was saying before about like the lore, some like dark. Hang on. This hand is giving me trouble. Okay. This storyline of Marceline is actually really, really sad. Her father is like a terrible, like deadbeat dad. He was like the devil. And she was like a little girl when the apocalypse was happening before. And so she forms this relationship with the Ice King before he turned into the Ice King by a magical crown. I don't know why I'm explaining this whole thing. But all that to say that as the show goes on, it starts off as like this really innocent kind of thing that's like each episode stands on its own. And then as the story progresses, you start to get more continuity of the story, and you start learning more about, you know, the main villains and the big bads, and you know, things get more complex. I think it was maybe like what they were trying to do was like age up with the fans of the show, you know, as the kids that watched it in the first season were getting older. They maybe started to add like some more adult themes. And honestly, some of it is really, really intense and sad. But okay, so that is Marceline. Okay, Marceline. Alright, I'm going to draw one more character. And I'm going to draw Princess Bubblegum. And Princess Bubblegum is definitely one of those characters that becomes way more complex over time, or it's revealed that they're way more complex, or she is. Because at first, she's just this cute princess of like a candy land style kingdom. All of her subjects are like candy or sweets. And, you know, she's just cute. Like, she does science and stuff to help the kids. Why do I keep saying that? The Jake and Finn. And, you know, she asks them for help a lot when she needs it. But honestly, she kind of seems a little bit evil as the show goes on. Like, she does some very morally questionable things throughout the show's run. And honestly, like, I started to like really dislike her as a character. But I don't know, yeah, I think that's really interesting how the character development was so like deep, you know, for a kid's show. But yeah, I just figured that she would be like cute and friendly the whole time, and she has like a sweet voice and stuff. So you think like, okay, this is a good person, but I mean, she's not evil either. I think it's one of those things that she's complex, and like other characters, she has flaws, but she was actually friends with Marceline. This is like another like a relationship that becomes revealed over time as well. They used to be close, and then like they drifted apart. So that is Princess Bubblegum. And yeah, that's it. I think I'm done. So I think I'm going to draw all of the Belchers today, all of the family. And then maybe I'll throw in some side characters at the end. But yeah, Bob's Burgers. I really like Bob's Burgers. I definitely go through phases with it. Like, I'll be watching it every day, and then I'll go like 2 years without watching it. But it actually has been a minute since I've watched it. But I'm gonna start with Bob. You know, the patriarch of the family, and he is a dreamer. You know. I really like Bob. He's kind of like a good example of like, you know, a positive masculine energy, you know. He's not toxic. He loves his kids. He dreams of creative expression. I do think, you know, he's made some mistakes as a dad, but as far as TV dads on animated series go, he's definitely top tier. I would definitely prefer Bob for a dad than Peter Griffin, for example. But, you know, anyways. It's hard to believe that Bob's Burgers came out in 2011, which is crazy to me because that was a long time ago. But compared to a lot of other shows, it feels, you know, like relatively new, I guess. Yeah, I remember when it came out and really liking it. It was definitely a different vibe in those early seasons, you know. I feel like it was a lot more like every other, or it just didn't really have its own voice yet. It kind of had that same kind of raunchy sense of humor as a lot of other shows. But then I think over the seasons it kind of became a little bit more wholesome and like family oriented, you know. Alright, that's Bob. And let's go ahead and do Linda. I feel like Linda is like somehow weirdly the hardest one to draw. I do practice, you know, before I do this. And I had to do her like so many times. And honestly, each time it felt like I was getting worse at it. I don't really know why. It's like, she seems simple enough, but I feel like the proportions, you know, if you get them a little bit off, it's not Linda anymore, you know. But Linda is like a really, really funny character, maybe my favorite character of the whole series. And her character is a little bit based on, well, the voice actor's own mother. Well, from my understanding, because he was like a comedian, and he was doing like just online little sketches, videos, where he was imitating his mom, and those videos kind of like blew up, and that's how like the creators of Bob's Burgers like noticed him. And honestly, Linda is like really similar to like those videos if you go back and watch them. So I feel like, you know, that was, you know, where it came from. Okay, but that is Linda. so now I'm gonna do, now I'm gonna do, now I'm gonna do the middle child, Gene. Eugene. And Eugene is another great example of just like someone who's like not afraid at all to be himself, you know. Honestly, in the way that the Belchers raise their kids, they really raise them with confidence, I have to say. They all really just go for what they want, you know, and I respect it. They really are like champions of each child as an individual and who they are as a person, and it shows, you know, they want to have relationships with their kids and they're interested in them, and I think that's really cool. You know, you don't always see that in shows. You really often see like parents not caring about that kind of stuff. And so I feel like this family dynamic is, well, it's not perfect, but I kind of messed up with that. But okay, yeah. Anyways, they support Gene, you know, in all of his ventures and even things that might, you know, be embarrassing for the parents. They're just like, you know, do you, which I think is cool. And Gene is a musician, you know. He likes to play his little keyboard with fake, or like with, you know, sound effects and stuff on it. And honestly, later on in the series, he starts writing some pops, you know, a full musical at one point, which is wild. Gene is funny for sure. Like, they all have their own qualities that make them, you know, fun characters, but he's not my favorite, I wouldn't say. I think he's cute though, you know. I like seeing him you know, interact with the other characters. But yeah. I can't remember how old he is. I think he's like 9 or 10. But okay, so that is Gene. I have bad posture. Okay, so let's go ahead and do the youngest Belcher, which is Louise. Okay, so Louise is kind of like the wildest one of all of them, you know. She has this kind of erratic and kind of aggressive, chaotic energy. And she's voiced by Kristen Shaw, who I think is just one of the funniest comedic actors. I remember her from 30 Rock, which did watch this show as a kid when I was really young with my dad a lot. I really liked it, I think, at the time. And I had always been planning to do a video about Scooby, but I did get a comment pretty recently, a couple of comments asking for Scooby, and just want to say thank you to those commenters for reminding me I wanted to do it. And I'm gonna draw all of the main 5 characters of Scooby-Doo, and I'm gonna start with, sorry. I'm gonna start with Scooby. And I didn't really have any time to practice these at all. So this is my first go at all of this. So please don't judge me too harshly on these drawings. But yeah, so Scooby is a great Dane, and he's kind of like a cowardly giant. And this show of Scooby-Doo, like the original version, Scooby-Doo, Where Are You, was kind of like an amalgamation of a lot of different things that were popular at the time. So this came out in 1969, I believe. And there was just a lot of things changing at the time because of certain parental watch groups that were complaining about cartoons of the day being like way too violent. And because of their actions, they were able to get a lot of different shows canceled, leaving like animators to scramble for new material. And Scooby-Doo was one of those shows. And even though it took inspiration from so many other things at the time, like Archie comics and like this old sitcom called Domi, Romy. I can't remember, but it's not, obviously in the pop culture references today, it's not as well known. So I think it's funny how the show kind of survived what it was trying to emulate. Sometimes that happens. But yeah, so that was Scooby. And now I'm gonna draw his best buddy, Shaggy. And Shaggy is kind of like the stoner, kind of lazy, hippie guy of the group. And I think he was voiced by this voice actor and radio DJ called Casey Kasem. If that wasn't Shaggy, it was someone else on the show, I remember reading. And I never listened to like him on the radio or anything, but I remember like my dad talking about him. Which is funny. Because we did watch the show together and he would be like commenting about stuff like that, and I was were specials with like celebrity guests that would help the kids solve their mysteries. And a lot of times they would be like real people. Oh, I kind of messed up that arm. But, yeah, like, it would be like the Harlem Globetrotters, or like, sometimes, like, yeah, real people like that, like the Three Stooges were in one episode. And then other, like, fictional characters like Batman and Robin and stuff like that. Because a lot of those characters were like tie-ins with other series created by the same production house, which was Hanna-Barbera. Which they also made like Josie and the Pussycats and like Archie and stuff like that. Okay, so that was Shaggy. And let's see, what should I do now? Let's go ahead and do Daphne. And I guess I kind of like alluded to that before, but each of the characters were like these very archetypal roles in the series. So Daphne was like basically the danger-prone member of the mystery gang. And so she was just always getting kidnapped or trapped or lost in all the episodes. Until like further down the line, you know, in the newer versions of the show, and like these characters, Daphne later becomes a little bit more capable and like suddenly has these karate skills and can fight monsters and stuff really well. And there was a TV show or a movie that I watched as a kid where she was like a news reporter. So I think they did make an attempt to like modernize her character and make her less disaster prone, which I think is good. But that being said, I wouldn't describe her character as ever having been dumb or anything like that. Like she was always pretty level-headed, but she did just get into trouble a lot. And there was always like this little romance vibe with her and Fred. Okay, so that's Daphne. Yeah, I feel like these aren't coming out amazing, but that's okay, right? Alright, so now I'm gonna do Fred. Fred is the leader of the group. And he's kind of like the main one figuring out how to catch the monsters. So every episode, in addition to the fact that these characters were super well defined in terms of like their roles as characters in the show, each episode was also just very formulaic and followed the same plot points, like almost to a T. So the kids would be because it came out around the same time as Adventure Time. And everyone knows Adventure Time. But I'm gonna start with Mordecai, the Blue Jay. So Mordecai is a Blue Jay, and he works and lives at a park as like a groundskeeper with his friend Rigby the raccoon. And it's kind of like they're just slackers in their early 20s. And they just get into, all sorts of trouble. And Mordecai is kind of like a little bit more serious, a tiny bit more serious, and cautious than Rigby. And he's a little bit more focused on getting his act together, I would say, I feel like it's interesting because the show was on Cartoon Network, and I feel like, well, I'm not sure who the intended demographic was for this show because it's about people in their early 20s, and they're kind of dealing with adult or young adult issues. But again, it was on Cartoon Network, so I just thought, yeah, that's pretty interesting. And it's a little bit influenced or inspired by like 1980s buddy comedies. There's actually like a lot of like 1980s references and also like technology in the show that they use. Okay, so that's Mordecai. Okay, so now I'll do Rigby, who's like the other main character, the raccoon. And yeah, he's just more crazy, a little more out there. But yeah, like I was saying, that the show makes a lot of references to the 80s, but then there's also like, they talk about like using the internet and like making viral videos and stuff. So I don't know, it's a little bit of a mashup of different eras in that way. Anachronistic, natural event, cataclysmic event. And so it becomes like, a much bigger problem. And so a lot of the show, even though it's kind of grounded in this realistic environment, it always kind of devolves into like some kind of like crazy reality bending experience. Okay, so that is Benson. Alright, now I'm gonna do another employee at the park, and his name is High Five Ghost. And High Five Ghost obviously is a ghost. And he has like, a high five, or a hand sticking up for a high five at the top of his head. And he sort of has this like close friendship with another worker. So there's kind of like two duos at the park, and they're kind of like the antagonistic duo that are always like making fun of Mordecai and Rigby. So yeah. But I was reading that the characters, or the sense of humor and the writing, is heavily inspired by the humor of like a lot of British television shows from a certain era, like the early 2000s. Because J.G. Quintel was like introduced to a lot of those shows by his British roommate in university or college. And so a lot of that kind of drier sense of humor ended up in the show. So and the writing in the show was critically pretty well received. Thought of as clever. Okay, so that was High Five Ghost. And now I'm gonna draw his buddy, Muscle Man. And I sort of imagine that the name Muscle Man is supposed to be a little bit ironic, because he's not especially muscular, but he's definitely the more antagonistic of the two, between him and High Five Ghost. And he's always making like your mom jokes, but he's like getting it wrong. And he says my mom instead. And yeah, one thing about this show that I definitely thought about while watching it, and even thinking about it now, is that all of the main characters of the show are male. And there are like a couple of female characters, but they are honestly just like the love interest, and usually, or they really don't have any influence in the series at all until later on. Which, I don't know. It's fine, I guess, because it's just a different perspective, but it's definitely something I noticed. And while I was like reading up about this show and like looking up images and stuff, I came across a Substack article that was talking about that specifically, and how that the show was sort of like upholding and also kind of like reiterating a lot of I don't know, tropes of a lot of homosocial behaviors and dynamics in media was just kind of in real life. And it was kind of both like describing and subverting those earlier iterations of that idea. So I thought that was interesting, but alright. So that was Muscle Man. And there's another person who works there named Skips. And I think Skips is like a yeti. And he's immortal too, I think. And he's also super buff. And actually, I was reading that the voice actor who plays Skips is Mark Hamill, who is famously Luke Skywalker in the original Star Wars movies, which I had no idea, which I thought that was funny. And his character is kind of like a no-nonsense guy that helps out, you know, when the boys are in trouble, and he's not as angry as Benson, who is always threatening to fire the two main characters. And I do feel like, you know, maybe this show is like overshadowed in part by Adventure Time in a lot of ways, because it did sort of maintain that humor, that like humor-driven plots that almost all of the series maintained like a comedic tone, whereas Adventure Time sort of slowly brought in more serious themes and became kind of a darker show as it went on. Okay, so that was Skips. And I think I'll just do one more character today. The owner of the park, named Pops. Pops. And I was a little bit dreading drawing Pops because his head is just a big circle. And I can never, it's really hard for me to do a perfect circle. But whatever. He's a very goofy old man, kind of out of it, very friendly, and bizarre. I like Pops, he's a cute character. And he's very nice to Mordecai and Rigby. But the last season actually of the show was like a departure from the original kind of setting, because they end up in like an orb floating through space with like the park, which is really bizarre. And it gets a little bit more serious, but not a lot. And it still kind of was that kind of surreal stories, But it's a good show if you haven't seen it. It's pretty funny. And that was Pops, and I think that's all I'm gonna do today. Well, I hope you like this one. Let me know in the comments if you want to see more compilations like this. And I will see you in the next one.